Hey, everybody. Thanks for taking the time out, and I apologize for the lateness. Hugely embarrassing in that I was delivering the presentation without having started the event. So thanks, Chris, for cutting in. I'll try to speed through a bit of this at the start because I've covered it. My name is Logan. I'm the editor here after high school. I'm not sharing my screen anymore either. How embarrassing. Okay. This is me. And yes, apologies. Okay. Scholarships Canada. We'll get into it. I got a diploma from college, worked as an editor, went to U of T, now I work as a writer and editor, which is great, but I know a thing or two about tuition fees as a result. Higher ed typically will pay you more the more educated you are. There's some caveats to this in that Canada has a shortage of skilled tradespeople, so we may see some jumps here in apprenticeship and trades specifically. But the basic through line as a rule of thumb is that the more educated you are, the more likely you are to earn a higher income over the course of your career. Now, lifestyle inflation could catch up with you, something to consider. But it's more than just money. It's about civic engagement. It's about being a well-rounded person, somebody who is a member of their community in a meaningful way. Now, does higher ed select for that? Does it teach you these skills? It's probably a combo of both. But we want to encourage you not to think of college or university just as a place to get skills for your future job, but it's a place to get skills as a human being, as a person. Okay. In terms of art, I just want to cover some of these, and I'll do it very quickly. Scholarship, grades and accomplishments. We generally use this as a kind of generic term as well, Scholarships Canada, right? But specifically, it is related mostly to grades and accomplishments. So if you score 90% in high school, you might get an entrance scholarship, for example. Bursary, by contrast, is based specifically on financial need. That means you need to have some kind of gap in your funding. How schools and admins assess this is another question maybe we can get into later. Award is a general term also, but very specifically based on accomplishments. So maybe you are the star quarterback, you threw the winning pass, and they give you the football award for the year. Who knows? They're often not renewable. We'll cover what that means in a second. And then a grant. Similarly, not renewable, generally more related to research. If you're trying to do a project of some kind, you need a bit of cash to fund it, you might be able to get a sort of research grant. They're generally not renewable either. What renewable means is that an award will continue to fund you year in, year out. So for example, you get a renewable scholarship in your first year. That renewability continues on in year 2. You keep your grades up and they say, hey, here's another round of funding. If you can find something that's 3 years renewable, you could cover essentially your whole degree, right? Keep getting funded as long as you continue to qualify. So, okay, great. How will you pay for everything? Here are the pillars that most people will use, and most people will require essentially some share from each. Savings and work is highly contingent on whether you have the time and wherewithal to not only have a part-time job, but also to sock some cash away. So that's tricky. Family and parents, same story. If you're lucky enough to be in a family where your folks maybe have set some cash aside for you and you have access to that, they like you well enough to share it, then great. But again, not everybody's in this position. Some folks just won't have that privilege, really. So we continue down the line. Loans. This is something that's going to probably come for most students, realistically. How heavily you get dinged is the real question. Loans can come from the federal or provincial government, which is the best case scenario, essentially, because the repayment terms are favorable for students. Alternatively, you can look at like a bank line of credit for a student, which again is more favorable than a standard line of credit, but less favorable than a governmental student loan. And if you're an international student, you could look at external funding even beyond that, like Empower, for example, will offer loans to students who are doing master's programs abroad. And the catch, it's not really a catch, but the downside of taking out a loan is that you have to repay it. If you're getting a provincial or federal student loan, your repayment terms are much more generous than if you're getting it from a guy in a back alley or a payday loan kind of joint. So loans may be relevant, but bear in mind you have to pay it back even if you get some support. For example, I still got a couple $1,000 outstanding on mine, and that was from years ago. Almost through it. Okay, finally, scholarships and bursaries. This is what we're here to talk about. This is money that is essentially quote unquote free. Now, you do have to work hard for it in the past and in the future, right? But it is money that you do not have to repay and that is specifically for you to support your education. So you think about $1,000 scholarship. Sounds great, except my tuition is $7K. My living expenses are maybe $12K on top of that. And that's to say the least, right? So $1,000 doesn't seem like it'll go so far, but it could cover your textbooks for a year, your yearly Metro Pass if you're studying in person, phone bill, entertainment. My parents used to know the OSAP as the Ontario Stereo Acquisition Program. Okay, scholarship myths. So right now I want to cover 5 sort of misconceptions that folks have. Some of this is drawn from research that we've done recently, so these stats are updated. Myth 1, I don't have the marks. So we think of scholarships, we think of grades, right? We think of the top performing student in whatever category. Stunningly, though, a lot of the awards that we index on Scholarships Canada don't ask about academic average. They're looking at other factors. What those are, we'll cover in a second. But if you're not the sort of straight A student, maybe you've got decent grades, nothing outrageous, you are not disqualified by that, far from it, in fact. Myth 2, lots of competition. This is a sort of yes and no thing. A lot of admins want more apps, and yet some get no apps at all. How you can ID these is tricky. Scholarships Canada, we've got a little like heat meter on each listing showing you how popular it is. So lower heat means less competition, theoretically. But the basic idea is that there are opportunities out there that are going unclaimed. And if you don't put a little bit of time in up front, then you won't have your hat in the ring when they are drawn. So something to consider. Some awards will have a ton of competition, don't get me wrong. Others have little to none. Okay, only schools give awards, definitely not true. We've got like 20,000 awards from non-educational admins. And by that, we mean primarily governments who also offer grants and so on. Companies and corporations is a huge one, foundations, associations, unions, religious groups, and so on. We'll get into a little bit later, but a lot of non-schools offer scholarships. It might even surprise you who and what is out there. And they do it for lots of different reasons that maybe we'll get into. Anyway, the point being that your school that you're going to study at is probably your first stop, your first step. But you want to think about all sorts of different organizations around you that may have opportunities as well. Okay, myth 4 of 5, deadlines only in the spring. Definitely not true. We have seen a spike sort of February, March, April, just from our most recent inquest into our data. But summer is pretty decent. October's got a big spike as well. Basically, the idea is deadlines happen throughout the year. So unfortunately, you're never off the hook, quote unquote. But the sort of early year, we're kind of sliding out of it now, is a big factor. So something to think about for next year as well. And finally, myth 5, not in financial need. That's, I mean, lucky you if that's true, but surprisingly, only about 42% of the awards that we have ask about financial need at all. It's a big number, but it is not the bulk. So even if you feel like you come from a well-off family and they've got savings, you shouldn't apply. Well, there's lots of opportunities out there. And word of the wise, probably most people are in financial need anyway, unless you've got your tuition and living expenses saved up, which kudos to you if you do. Okay, just to recap the myths. Awards are often not based on marks. They're looking at other criteria, which we'll get into in a minute. Lots of admins want more apps. Lots of admins don't come from schools as well. Schools are very popular admin, but companies, unions, etc. are all opportunities there as well. Deadlines are year-round. You don't need to be in financial need. There's an award for you, and you can't win if you don't apply. So this is a little bit of a caveat maybe you want to be aware of, because that is the same logic that lottery companies use, essentially, right? You can't win if you don't buy a ticket. You can't receive a scholarship if you don't apply. Now, that doesn't count automatic consideration awards, which do exist, and maybe we can get into that a little later. But the basic idea is you generally need to put a little bit of time and effort in if you want a shot at a lot of different awards. Okay. A scholarship for you. That is the main conceit, and I'll spend a second here as well, because I think that self-talk, self-conception is really powerful. And a lot of people will have a sense that you'll sort of self-classify and say, I'm not worthy of receiving an award. I didn't get a 98% average. I don't volunteer enough. I don't play a sport, blah, blah, blah. There's lots of reasons to kind of talk yourself out of it, to see yourself as somebody who is never going to win. So reconceptualizing that and seeing yourself as somebody who is deserving can be powerful. And that sort of self-talk is a kind of life lesson. So something to think about when we're digging into more of the meat here. All right, I want to take a quick look at a handful of awards that are kind of interesting. These are picked a little bit at random. I just wanted to highlight a few different interesting opportunities and the various kind of criteria that they'll often look for. So this one is actually two awards, really, for data analytics and cybersecurity out of NATE, which is in Edmonton, Alberta. It comes from PCL, Future of Construction. PCL Construction is a construction firm. They're trying to support these new fields. And so they are offering a couple of $1,000 to students at NATE in these programs. Crucially, leadership, community service, and or volunteering are an asset. These three terms, leadership, community service, volunteer, are going to come up again and again, because as I mentioned before, academics are not such a huge factor. A lot of admins are moving towards this sort of quality-based leadership, community service, volunteer, extracurricular. Who are you as a person? What is your personality? How are you engaged? That kind of perspective. So you'll see this again and again. Okay, scholarship 2. This one's kind of neat because, I didn't change this screenshot. In any case, the text is correct. East Tennessee, if you're in Canada or America, they are doing 2,200 awards, dollar awards of 10 each. And interestingly, they're doing the first 100 applications will be considered. So we're starting to see this a little bit more. TD did this this spring as well, where essentially they're offering X number of scholarships, and they are offering them to essentially the first X applicants. So in this case, it's the first 100. TD took 400 or 500, right? So all the more reason you want to sort of stay on top of what is coming so that you don't miss these opportunities and you find out that you were the 101st or whatever. Okay, this one is from Guelph International Undergrad Scholarship. It is for students from outside Canada. I think we have about registered today 2/3 or 7/10 are Canadian, so some of our audience is from outside of Canada, and hello from Toronto. This kind of award is for you, students coming from outside to study specifically at University of Guelph in this case. If you're full-time with a 70% average, which is a decent grade, but not incredible, right? It's not outrageous. And then again, you'll notice school/community involvement or other extracurriculars are required. This is your leadership, community service, volunteer stuff again and again, right? It comes up again and again. So this one's from Guelph, pretty sweet if you're coming from abroad. Okay, we'll cover a couple of more. This one is sort of the inverse in that it is for Canadians who are going abroad, in this case to Oxford Brookes in the UK. The award is £2,000, which fluctuates $3,400 or so. And then there's a couple of deadlines there if you submit a tuition deposit So April 15 for a master's degree is coming up real soon. Otherwise, they'll keep offering those. A couple more. I included this one just for fun because it is about poetry. It's for students at Dow out on the East Coast. It's automatically assessed, which essentially means you don't need to apply. They will consider you essentially as long as you submit a poem. The prize is only $400, but it's open to Canadian and international students. And I highlight this specifically because I would often mention in previous instances of this presentation that poetry awards are hard to find and that you might be better served for engineering, for example. And so this is just to illustrate that poetry awards, even so, they do exist. They're just hard to find. Finally, last one. This one's kind of cool. It is from U of T, which is, my alma mater, I guess, here in the city. Well-ranked worldwide university research school. This one's for international students who are coming to U of T. And I highlight this because it is not only is it a full ride scholarship, which is tuition, books, even your residence and food and everything for 4 years, but you need to be nominated by your high school. So your high school, wherever you live, India, whatever, they can suggest that you are a great student and you should be considered for this award. So it's a full ride. They're very rare. That's why I highlighted it. Okay, that is our inventory, if you will, a quick look at some of the different options that are closing soon. Now you might be thinking, how do I actually find this stuff? So here are a handful of factors that are to some degree in descending import. So let's look at it. Field of study. This is a huge one. I just alluded to poetry versus engineering, for example. What field you study is going to make a big impact on what your options are. Right now, we're seeing a big push towards STEM. I highlighted cybersecurity and data analytics, stuff that's kind of trendy. But anything STEM is pretty safe. Arts gets a little trickier. It's sad but true. So your field of study really is going to weigh in your eligibility. So too is year of study. So it essentially gets more difficult to find funding the deeper into your degree that you are. So if you come in first year and you are eligible for an entrance scholarship, which essentially means coming out of high school into university, they'll give you an award. A lot of times those entrance awards are renewable, which is a magic word that we discussed earlier. Essentially, they'll continue to pay you year in, year out, right? Now, if you're coming in to third year, you haven't looked for scholarships yet, it's just proportionately that much more difficult, frankly. It's a sort of sad but true thing. That's not to say there are not awards for upper year students. For example, the Electro Federation of Canada is running a huge program right now that is specifically for students in second year and above. So they do exist. You just got to keep your eye out. Better to start sooner than later. Okay. Activities. This is a factor. We talked about them. In the United States, we often hear about the sort of full ride playing for Penn State football, and they're going to cover my degree as well. We don't have so much of that here in Canada, much less strong college athletics programs. Here in Canada, we're focused more on the latter items, which are leadership, community involvement, volunteer. You could probably say them with me in chorus at this point. You're going to hear them again and again. If you're not already engaged in these kind of activities, it's not like you are totally out of luck. Some folks don't have time to volunteer. They're working a part-time job. They're taking care of grandma, whatever else. You just want to have a pretty good story for the reason why you don't have much extracurriculars, or reframe your activities and hobbies in a way that they are palatable to admins. We can get into this in a little bit, but the basic idea being that you want to be seen as somebody who is engaged with their community somehow, even if that just means you're attending a club over lunch hour at school once a week or something like that. Okay. Academic average, pretty straightforward. This is your most recent grades. Admins will generally look at your grade 11, grade 12, kind of depends on the timing. often they'll not really scrutinize you too deeply. They may want a transcript. They may just take your word for it. It may not matter at all. So academics comes and goes. Okay, some other facts. Okay, heritage. This is your ethnic background. This is a big one, especially in Canada for Indigenous students. So anybody who is aware of Canada's history knows that there is a lot of tragedy there and a lot of sort of wrongdoing. Truth and reconciliation is a mammoth task and ongoing. And one small fragment of that is supporting scholarships for Indigenous students. So governments, companies, lots of different orgs will offer them. But there are awards for people of other heritages as well. I've seen all sorts of stuff from Chinese to Polish to Norwegian to what have you, Caribbean more broadly, African very broadly, right? It really depends on the award. Affiliations. So I want to spend a few minutes on this because this one's kind of interesting and I have a little bit of personal backstory. Affiliation essentially means the companies, groups, unions that are affiliated with you or your family. So from my personal point of view, when I was in high school and heading to college, I worked at a No Frills, right? So No Frills is a Loblaws company. Loblaws offered scholarships to employees. So there's one. It was also a union position, and the union that I was in offered scholarships. So that was two opportunities right there just from my part-time job as a shelf stocker at No Frills. Okay, great. On top of that, my dad at the time worked for Coca-Cola. And so Coca-Cola company offered scholarships to, excuse me, sons and daughters of employees. And of course, my dad's job also was a union gig. And so the union there also offered awards to dependents and so on. So that was four distinct prongs right from there, just from my job at No Frills and my dad's job at Coke. So what I'm getting at is you want to think about the people around you and think about the entities around them, essentially. Now, when I say you or your family, I pretty much mean close family, nuclear family, if you will. Grandma and grandpa, maybe in some cases, aunts and uncles, probably not in most cases. Okay, that's affiliation. Personal circumstances. This is stuff that's indelible to you, about you, that maybe you wouldn't change even if you could. Stuff like if you're a parent, you were a foster child, maybe you're a member of the 2S LGBTQ plus community, whatever, disability, that kind of thing. Just stuff that is unique about you. There are awards for all sorts of people, Crohn's disease, you name it. Okay. Financial need, pretty straightforward. Pertains to your income and the income of your family. If admins are getting into it, they'll maybe ask you for a budget, how much you expect to spend, how much money you have saved up. Some might ask for an assessment from your provincial student loan provider. Here in Ontario, for example, we have OSAP is our provincial student loan setup, and I'm familiar with at least one award admin who wants to see your OSAP assessment to help decide if you are in financial need, to be sure. Others will just take your word for it if they ask at all. So if you're really not sure whether you are in financial need, quote unquote, check with the scholarship admin. Essentially, when in doubt, reach out. The listings that we have on Scholarships Canada have a little bit of contact info at the bottom in a lot of cases. You can send an email, send a phone call, just ask them what's what. Now, the reason you could do this is twofold. One, to get an answer to your question, of course, but two, and this is a little bit more nebulous, but schools, especially and scholarship admins sometimes, have a factor that they call demonstrated interest. And essentially, this means you are somebody they know is interested. They've heard from you on social media, they've gotten emails from you, whatever else. You are somebody who is who's reaching out. And in certain edge cases, especially for competitive program seats, for example, at your school of interest, this demonstrated interest can be a factor on who they eventually decide. If it comes down to you and a hypothetical other candidate, and you've been reaching out and asking questions, and candidate B, they never heard from them, they just might give you the edge. So something to consider if you're not sure, it's always better to ask than to continue wondering, I think. Okay. Finally, location. Where you live is a big factor, of course, especially if you're an international student. Where you go to school, also a factor. Um, I'm familiar with, in some cases, at least back in the day, the town of Chatham in southwest Ontario, a small town. They would pull together sort of town scholarship for somebody who was leaving Chatham after grade 12 to attend college or university somewhere. And they would get like $1,000 from the Chamber of Commerce. So think about your little town, your region, do a little bit of searching. You never know what you might find. All right, featured scholarships. This is the fastest way to find new awards, wide range of students often, but it also has stuff like surveys, which is just a way to earn extra cash. This section is constantly rotating. We won't get into it yet, but if you're going to start anywhere, you may as well start with the featured scholarships. Okay, but beyond that, Scholarships Canada uses matching tech, we call it Get Matched, to essentially take some of the work out of it for you. Some old screenshot here, but this is essentially the site. When you join up, you can tell it that you want to get matched, and it's going to ask you a whole bunch of questions. It's like signing up for social media, essentially. My name is blah, blah, blah. My email is so on and so forth. And it just goes from there, right? It's going to ask you about all the factors we've discussed, like your field of study, your heritage, your activities, and blah, blah, blah. And it's going to do its best to spit out a list of awards that match you in some way or another. So you can see here in the past, I grabbed a screenshot here, 43 awards that I had matched to. You can click into each one, see the value and the deadline, and so on. It's also going to ask you about subscriptions. Obviously, I advocate all of them, but the red box here is the most important, which is, of course, the scholarship deadline alerts. What this is a monthly send that pulls together awards that are closing soon. So it's, I believe, a 40-day window. You get the email April 1st, and you've got awards that are closing sometime between then and May 10, for example, that match you in some way or another, and you can just click through. We've also got newsletters for various audiences, any counselors on the line. We do a weekly digest as well on scholarships and events, just to keep folks posted, try to make these awards as available as we can, really. Yeah, you're matching scholarships. We talked about this a little bit. It's just a list. You can check them or X them as desired. You can also find and search. Of course, it is a website like any other. Generally advocate scholarship name or field of study is a good one. STEM, biology. You want to use variants of your keywords as well. If you've searched engineering, make sure you try engineer, that kind of thing. It's kind of simple stuff, but it helps you turn up new results, right? If biology didn't find one, maybe biological will, that kind of deal. Scholarships by categories. Yes, we've also got this. It just is a quick way to find awards for various types of students, art students, Black students, business students, engineering, blah, blah, blah. If you sort of fit one of these categories, that'll help you start. Okay, general advice. Getting motivated. You have to be willing to put in the time. This gets to what I mentioned earlier, which is that applying for scholarships is not, in some ways, it's like applying for a job, working a part-time job, and in some ways it's not. You have to prepare a lot of the same documents, right? And put your best face forward with your resume and personal responses. We'll get into all that. But of course, with a part-time job, you know for sure they're going to pay you at the end of the week. With a scholarship opportunity, you are hoping they're going to pay you. So you do have to be motivated. You got to put some time in. A few hours a week is probably aggressive, but as we mentioned, there are new listings all the time. We're seeing new awards that are time delineated, wherein they're taking the first 100 applicants. So making sure that you are treating it a little bit like a part-time job is valuable, I think. You want to think of it more like going to the gym to get shredded. You can't get ripped overnight. You need to be hitting the gym day in, day out, right? Or like studying for an exam. You don't want to cram the night before. You want to do a little bit over time. Okay. Scholarships Canada, deadline alerts, I covered that already. Keeping your profile updated is a good idea as well. Just check in, see if anything's changed. Understand the requirements. Have questions, contact the admin. I covered this as well. When in doubt, reach out. Always good advice. Smaller awards, less competition. This is a good one because you may see that $400 poetry award and think $400, it's not enough. But correspondingly, these smaller awards often have less competition. So if it takes you an hour to apply for an award that 10,000 other people are going to apply for, or an hour to apply for one that 10 other people are going to apply for, you might have better odds, essentially. So keep an eye out for the smaller awards, the weirder awards, the hot tub cover guy, the duct tape at prom type stuff, right? That people think are a little bit weird. Okay, being prepared. Having your reference letter, personal statement, and resume on hand is highly advised. We'll cover that in a second, how you can actually do it. And then discouragement. Again, this goes to the part-time job sort of question, but it's a broader point as well about resilience, bouncing back in the face of hardship. You're not likely going to receive every award that you apply for. Lots of great students out there, right? So being able to, they used to call it getting back on the horse, right? Picking yourself up, dusting yourself off, saying, this does not define me. I am going to try again, right? I'm going to change my habits a little bit and get back on that horse. So not giving up is a strong life skill. If you're going to take anything away from this, it is be resilient and don't give up. Okay. Boilerplate documents. So these 3 items are what you want to have on hand, and you can draw them up today after this session, even without knowing what award you're going to apply to. Now, bear in mind, this is a boilerplate, which basically means a template. When in doubt, this is what you want to have ready. Now, at the bottom, it says you want to customize these documents for each award you apply to. For example, if you're applying to the Hot Tub Cover Guy Award, you don't want to, and he wants to know why you love hot tubs, you don't want to write about, how you trained your dog when you were a kid. You want to write about hot tubs. But if the topic is up to you or it's more general, then great, go with your gut. So 3 items here you want to have: your resume. Give us just a 1-pager. We don't want more than that. Most admins are just kind of skimming them to see that it all makes sense. So keep it brief and punchy. Your personal statement. This is a big one, 500 words or so. We'll cover how to write it in the next slide, but having a concise, this is who I am, what I'm about, having that ready is going to help you, especially if an award pops up that you're not prepared for. You can just immediately pull up your statement and be good to go. References, same idea. You want to have probably 2, maybe even 3. And these are people who know you well in a sort of semi-professional academic capacity. They can speak to your character, but it shouldn't be your mom writing about how great a person you are, right? Teacher is good, a coach, your supervisor at your volunteer role, that kind of stuff, the nurse at the old folks home that you visit. People who know you and can speak to your personality and your accomplishments, but who aren't just like your best friend kind of thing. And having those on hand is good. Most scholarships won't really require references, but some of them will. And you don't want to be trying to hit up your old math teacher at 11 p.m. because you need a reference before midnight. Personal statement. So this is your 500 words. This is how you're going to knock it out today without even knowing what award you're applying to. So 4 items you want to hit in about 500 words. Who you are. What is your elevator pitch? Who the heck are you? How do you self-define yourself? Your goals is a huge one. What do you want to achieve? Why are you going to school? Why are you applying for this award? What are you doing next, essentially, right? So attending school just for the sake of learning is hugely valuable, but you probably do have a goal beyond that. Maybe there is a particular medical question that flummoxes you, or you've got the idea for the next killer app, whatever it is. Receiving the award, what does it mean to you? How would actually taking home the cash impact you? How would it make your life easier, more doable? How would it make your goals easier to accomplish? That kind of thing. You want to really reflect on, if I was the recipient, how would my life improve? Great. And then finally, same idea, but how would the people around you's lives improve if you were to take home the scholarship? So this might mean your immediate family. Maybe you don't need a part-time job now, so you can help out your sister's homework, whatever. This could be more broadly. Maybe you are a young woman in cybersecurity, for example, and you want to show other girls that cybersecurity is for them, right? Or whatever, right? How will receiving the award impact other people around you and make the world a better place, essentially? So if you can cover these 4 items in your personal statement, you'll be pretty good to go. If an award pops up and you're not ready for it, you'll have a few things you can just line up and send. Again, you want to customize, polish, edit, rewrite where necessary. But if you've got these things down and somebody else, a couple of people have looked it over and given you notes, even better. Other tips and FAQs, Scholarships Canada's full of them. There are lists and checklists and FAQs plenty. And if you're not sure, or excuse me, you can't find your question, you can send us an email. There's contact info in there. So if you hit scholarshipscanada.com, just check out the resources at the top, you'll find them. Instagram, lots of stuff on there. TikTok as well, I should mention. School Finder, this is our sister site. I'll plug this briefly. You can log in, same as Scholarships Canada, but this is focused primarily on schools. If you're not sure of what program you want to study, it'll try to match you to that. So music, kinesiology, whatever else. Each program has its own listing. It's got all the details on the costs and entrance requirements, blah, 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 as well as plenty of articles and advice every day on all sorts of stuff. So School Finder is cool too. Yeah, I just mentioned that, profiles. And events, lots of event listings. We're at an event, it's all good. Speaking of, I want to plug this real quick before I take some questions. April webinar series, this is the first of them. We've got several more coming, specifically for students looking to study abroad. So Canadian students going abroad, but if you are abroad, but you want to go to Japan or whatever, feel free to join us. Just hit the events page on School Finder or Scholarships Canada to find these links. Okay, FAQs, I just want to cover a handful of questions that we often get before we switch to the sort of live chat. So if you haven't fired questions into the Q&A panel yet, please do. So when should I apply? Students ask this all the time. Most cases, you're going to want to apply after you've got an offer of admission. Most admins want you to be enrolled in college or university, or at the very least accepted. So if you're really not sure where you're going to go, it's a good idea to kind of shop around for schools based on the scholarship opportunities they will give you. Some universities, especially colleges, will sort of compete against one another for your affections. So let them compete, see what's on offer. And then once you've accepted an offer of admission, then you can really start going wild and apply for whatever you can find. Awards for people in the trades. Yes, the incentive structure for apprenticeships is different from more traditional career paths, so the funding structure is different as well. We're doing our best to inventory more of these, and they are being offered more broadly by admins as well. So you want to look at tech, construction, apprenticeship, and so on. How many can I apply to and receive? As many as you like, really. Some orgs may say, you want an award from us, you can't get more awards from us, but the people across the street, all good, get an award from them too. So pretty much apply for as much as you can. Highest value awards, mentioned this, Canada has few full ride scholarships, but some do exist. Some of the biggest include Loran, TD scholarships for community leaders, and the Schulich Leader Scholarships. I'll mention here too, Schulich just introduced a massive skilled trades award as well. So alongside the Schulich Leader, which is the more traditional university awards, they've also done the skilled trades awards, which is a pretty massive program. It's quite cool in my opinion. Okay, can I defer an award? Yes and no. You should really reach out to the admin if you're not sure. And are there scholarships for international students? Yes, essentially, yes. They are less common and probably more competitive, which puts you at a disadvantage. You'll have to have pretty good grades or decent accomplishments. They're generally focused, yeah, more on academics than a lot of Canadian awards. That's about it, I think. Oh, next steps, of course. If you're grade 11, you want to build your reso. Volunteer. You want to interrogate its meaning. How has it impacted you? How has it impacted other people? You're in grade 12, apply for schools and awards. You're looking for entrance awards, and you're keeping an eye out for renewable awards. If you're already in college or uni, you want to get involved with like clubs and associations and make sure you have a meeting, at least one, with your financial aid office. Sit down with them. They are going to be experts in their own school's portfolio, and they'll probably have other opportunities nearby as well. Again, you're looking for second years and above. And you also want to consider department nominated awards. So these are, like the English award for the year or whatever. All the English profs are impressed by your work. Okay, pop quiz, no time for that. So I want to take some questions. That's it for this session in terms of prepared material. I'm going to stop my screen share and we will switch over to Q&A, and I'll take as many as I can in our remaining time. Otherwise, visit us on social, and thanks so much for your time, everybody. Okay, questions. All right, and we'll just kind of take
Logan, there are more questions in chat if you want to use that channel.
Okay, great. Yeah, so there will be, looks like probably more than able to cover here. As I mentioned, we'll have the recording available, and we'll point you to a frequently asked questions document too. Maybe that could cover some of this stuff. Okay. Let's see. Possible that your co-op placement could lead to a scholarship opportunity. Short answer, yes. I mean, your co-op placement is going to be essentially another affiliation type place. So just as I mentioned, the union that I worked for offered scholarships. There's no reason to believe that your co-op placement couldn't do the same. Great. Bad to scholarship multiple times? No, it's not necessarily bad. You don't just don't want to be badgering people, right? I'm living in Alberta, but planning on going to school in Ontario. Should I apply for Alberta Aid or OSAP? Great question. If I'm not wrong, you want to apply for Alberta Aid. You are a resident of Alberta. They're going to be able to help you, and any school in Ontario should be on the designated institutions list, meaning you'll be able to use it. Okay, scholarships for exchange students. That's interesting. They do exist. You'll often see it classed as study abroad. Last time I did this presentation, I highlighted one from U Calgary. That was a few $1,000 for a U Calgary student who wants to do a semester abroad. So they do exist. Definitely keep an eye out. Look for keywords like exchange, abroad, that kind of thing. Okay. Scholarships for political science, international relations, and diplomacy. Yeah, that's going to be really tricky. I don't know any offhand. It seems likely that that kind of thing might be handled more at the master's level. To that end, is there a scholarship for professional courses? I'm not sure totally what you mean by that. If by professional you mean master's level or like law studies, medical, that kind of thing, then definitely yes. If you're thinking more like PMP, project manager certification, I've seen less of that kind of thing. Most awards I've seen are aimed at students who are in undergrad or master's or doctoral. courses rather than like boot camps and that kind of thing. Hope that's helpful. How soon can we get started? I'm a pre-med student, strong application, looking for relief on the financial. I mean, it's never too soon, really. You want to get your docs in order. You want to have a sense of what sort of funding comes from the schools that you're interested in. That's the place you want to start. And then once you've got your school more or less locked in, you can start looking at awards opportunities from other organizations. Okay, when are they going to let us know if we got a scholarship? It's a good question. Often you might wait 4 or 8 weeks or even more. It really, really depends. Canadian scholarships for domestic aviation students. That's a good one too. Aviation is super expensive. Pretty sure I've seen 1 or 2. Nothing stands out to me right now, but I'd be looking for awards like aviation, airplane, aeroplane, right? You want to use variants of these keywords. I know for sure they are out there. Whether they'll match you specifically, who's to say? They do exist. Scholarships for an international student who did 4 years of high school. Is it different or the same? Not totally sure if you mean 4 years of high school here in Canada or abroad. Essentially, won't really matter though. If you are not a permanent resident of Canada, you will be classed as an international student and thus have to pay international student differential on tuition fees. But if you live in Canada and you're a permanent resident, you're essentially a Canadian student and you'll be eligible for Canadian scholarships. 4 years, 3 years, 2 years of high school, it doesn't really matter where you did what, as long as you've graduated. Good number of scholarships for business programs for Canada and the US. Yeah, business is pretty well represented from our recent report. Pretty sure it was in the 15% range of total opportunities. What you don't see often are business awards at the master's level. MBA is a classic, super expensive program. We don't often see awards for that, so it might be easier at undergrad. Not totally sure. Personal question for me, what campus was I at U of T? Downtown, St. George, which is still close to my house today, I'm lucky enough to say. Should I write a letter more about myself or the reasons why I want to go to the program I want to go to? So this is a personal statement question. It's a good question. You want a little bit of your personality in there. Your personal statement literally is pretty much the only place you can share who you are as a human being. So you probably want a little bit of your personality in there. You do want to hit on the reasons why you want to go to the program, but in theory, they should connect narratively, conceptually to your background, right? The personal history kind of stuff should somehow reflect the future goals kind of stuff and vice versa, right? I hope that helps. Graduating this year, taking a gap year. Should I still be looking for scholarships if I'm not enrolled in uni? Good question. Great question. Yes and no. So it's a good idea to get a sense of the landscape, especially if you are trying to shop around for schools. Figuring out what they have to offer is not a bad idea. You can sort of mull on that over your gap year. But of course, the caveat being that you're probably not really eligible for any of them. So you could find something that seems cool, but you can't really apply for it yet. So gap year is a good opportunity to build some of those skills, resume elements, and develop your sense of self, develop your understanding of the landscape, and then put it into practice when you do apply. Okay, qualifications that scholarship committees look for in applicants. Huge question and a good one. They're often looking for character, engagement with community, decent academics never hurts, but somebody who often is like sort of selfless or has accomplished something that has serviced others. So it's great to say that you wrote the great American novel in your free time and never published it. Okay, fine. But that really only impacts you versus somebody who 2 times a week is helping feed elderly folks at the retirement home, right? Like that is going to be a more meaningful impact in theory on you and your community than the novel writer. So really tough to say what qualifications it's going to depend, but somebody who is others focused is helpful, I would say. If we have a callback, how would we know if it's official and not a fraud? How official is your platform? We don't typically call people. Occasionally we do if we're running a scholarship ourselves, but 99.9% of the awards that we index, we don't run those awards. So anybody contacting you from them, you want to exercise skepticism. If it's us, we should have your background info and be able to prove it. But yeah, you want to exercise caution. Any award that we add should be legit. We do some due diligence to make sure. Like I say, you always got to be cautious online, but we do try to vet each of the awards before we add them to the listing. Okay, can I write a letter about myself using ChatGPT? You certainly can, but let me tell you, I get letters that are written by ChatGPT, and often I can tell, not maybe always, but I'm a writer and editor, and sometimes it just, I can tell, and I'll run it through a little checker, and it will say 98% AI written, and that turns me off personally. So I would be hesitant about using ChatGPT. After all, it is a personal statement, so using the words of other people seems antithetical to that idea. Scholarships from Canada be used in schools abroad? Yes and no, really depends. Some awards will specifically be for that. Some will ask that you attend a specific school or a suite of schools. Others may just say, hey, the money's yours, do with it what you will. Okay. Can I apply if I know the field of study I'm going into, but I'm not in post-secondary? Kind of no. Again, most awards are going to expect you to be accepted, if not outright enrolled. Is it okay to look for sports scholarships? And if yes, how does it work? I mean, sports scholarships for sure, they do exist. You want to Yeah, you could try just athletics, sports more broadly. If you have a specific sport, then hockey, baseball, whatever. I've seen awards for all of these things. But do admin committees chat between them? I don't know. I wouldn't expect they would in most cases, but I guess it's really going to depend. Um, yeah, Jordan here is saying do not use ChatGPT. Jordan, I think I agree. Completed high school, got grade 13. Can I apply for a scholarship? Yeah, grade 13. We don't use it anymore here in Canada, though we used to. Yeah, I mean, you're a high school grad, so you want to be looking for entrance scholarships. Apply for a scholarship for cybersecurity at the Rogers Cybersecurity Catalyst Program. Can't say I know what that is, but I'm curious, so I'm going to Google that myself a little later. Can I apply for any in grade 11? Is grade 11 too early? It's a good question. Essentially, yes, grade 11 is kind of too early. Some awards do specify that they are for current high school students, in which case grade 11 is perfect. Other awards might specify a age range. So they may say it's from 15 to 30, for example, in which case grade 11, also perfect. Many other awards are looking for people who are enrolled or accepted to college or university, in which case grade 11, too early. So it really depends on the award. Or are there ones for programs like IB, the International Baccalaureate High School? I haven't seen too much of that. Awards that specifically require you to have taken IB. So while it may be good as a sort of personal and academic development option, I wouldn't say taking an IB specifically is valuable. Okay, that's about it for time. We've got some more questions here. Tips for gap year students. I covered that a little bit. Do you apply after you get accepted to college or university? Essentially, yes. You can apply after you get an award, or excuse me, after you get an offer letter, even if you haven't accepted it yet. Do you have stats on how many scholarships want volunteer in community service? Yes, we do. And it's not a huge percentage, but of the awards that ask for an activity, it is one of the most popular ones. I don't have the stats offhand, but it's popular. They are among the most, like academics and community service are top two. Scholarships for U1, I'm really not sure what that is. I can look into it offline. And the recording. Yeah, we're going to make the recording available. So I think that about it. Yeah. Oh, and Chris has just put in the chat link to the Horatio Alger Scholarship. It's a great example. Awards specifically for grade 11s, right? So they're not common, but they are extant. Oh, okay. And a question from Jordan. Platform for an index scholarship search engine that assists an application. That's exactly it. Yeah. The costs associated with use, no cost for a user other than exposure to ads. Of course, the site is ad supported, totally free for students. The way we make money is ads, of course, as well as some organizations will essentially pay us to market their awards. So we're working with, for example, Eaton Electrical right now. They're trying to recruit Indigenous workers, and they're doing it through a scholarship and internship program. So Eaton pays us to help them promote their scholarship, essentially, which makes it free for students. Okay, requirements for bursaries. Bursaries are financial need, first and foremost. Pretty much, I mean, they may have other requirements, I guess, but that is going to be number one, number two, and number three. For a bursary specifically, you've got to be in financial need. How an admin classes that, again, is sort of up in the air, whether it's self-declared, a sort of household income budget that you submit. They may want to see your OSAP estimate or equivalent. So yeah, it kind of depends. Again, reach out to your admin if you don't know. All right, folks, I think we've kind of covered a lot of these now. And kind of tiring out throughout wise. So I think we can probably call it here. I do want to thank everybody again for taking some time out. Financial need as a definition fluctuates greatly. Yes, well put. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Sorry for the late start. Apologies, tech issue on my hand. Probably heard that before. Have a great evening, everybody, and have a nice day. Thanks again.